Good morning and welcome everyone to Physical Notebooks as Sounding Boards with Dr. Audra Robb. We encourage you to view this session directly from its YouTube page so you can chat live along with our presenter and viewers. You can find it on our YouTube channel at TheEdCollab or at gathering.theedcollab.com. If you don't see the chat, please refresh your browser. Your chats mean a lot to the presenters today, so please actively participate. You might even see yourself on screen, your comments on screen. The gathering here today is an inclusive and affirming environment. We will be actively monitoring the chat, and you can help by reporting accounts to YouTube. We are so pleased to welcome Dr. Audra Robb today. Unfortunately, Ellin was unable to be with us here this morning. Ellin was actually at a training in Alaska and got stuck in Barrow, Alaska, working at a school there. Her flight, unfortunately, was delayed. And so without cell phone service or any Wi-Fi at all, she was unable to be with us today. But she sends her sincere apologies for not being able to join today. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Audra Robb today.
So yes, hi, welcome everyone. I am also sad that Ellin won't be here. We were going to be in conversation and instead I'm going to be in conversation with you. So please do feel free to contribute via the chat. So I'm Audra Robb and I currently work at the United Nations International School in the curriculum office. Before that, I was a staff developer for a long time. And basically my interest in notebooks has been throughout my entire teaching and professional development and now curriculum career. So I'm really excited to share some thoughts with you about that today. So when Chris invited me and gave us this wonderful theme today of unmuting, it's very funny to think about notebooks as a place to be unmuted because obviously they are kind of silent. But Ellin and I came up with this idea of sounding board as a really nice metaphor to think about the role of the notebook in the classroom. So I'm going to try to share just some big picture things of how to view notebooks as more than, just a physical object. And so I'm hoping you're going to come along with me today and think about how they currently exist in your classrooms and how they might exist in the future. This is my email address. It's Ellin's also, but if you want to have access to these slides later, please feel free to write to me. I can put this back up at the end of the session. So I wanted to start with some thinking about writing and again, trying to connect the idea of writing to this idea of unmuting or finding our voices. So Joan Didion, in a wonderful essay she wrote called Why I Write, says, I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. And I think given what Chris and Carla were saying earlier this morning about the times we're living in when there is a lot of fear, there is a lot of uncertainty, there is a lot of even not knowing what we're looking at, what we're seeing. And for our students, this is true as well, that the notebook and writing generally can and should be a place to explore these things. And Toni Morrison also, in a wonderful essay called The Site of Memory, says if writing is thinking and discovery and selection and order and meaning, it is also awe and reverence and mystery and magic. So I can't promise all of these things will happen just because of a physical notebook, but I will say that notebooks can be a place for all of these things. So I wrote you all a poem today. And one use of notebooks that I find really helpful is a place for impromptu poetry. So here's my little poem for you about notebooks. A notebook, a room of your own for your thoughts. So Virginia Woolf famously wrote about the need of a room of one's own for writing, and a notebook as a tiny little room. Wherever you are, you can have that room. So let's kind of carry that image with us today as we think a little bit more about how do we make that place for students where it feels like they are going into a room truly of their own. So I first want to think about notebook types. So just like personality types, I think people have notebook types. So this is where you can just dash into the chat, like what kind of notebook do you love? I myself love a moleskin notebook, I have to say. I'm not doing brand, advertising or anything. But then I also love fancier notebooks. I brought with me today, this is one of the notebooks I used for doing my own graduate research. So I actually am very eclectic in notebooks, but let's just see if you type in the chat, like what are your favorite kinds of notebooks for your own self? There are tiny notebooks, there are bigger notebooks, there are composition notebooks, and there are people in the world who famously have used notebooks. And I think if you're trying to jumpstart or reboot notebooks in your classroom, it is kind of fun to look around and find out like which famous people, which famous authors, singers, poets have used notebooks. And yes, someone just wrote about the importance of it lying flat. I just was talking to a teacher yesterday who was like passionate about the need for it to lie flat, which is interesting because I like a binding so they don't fall out. The pages don't fall out. But for example, Jay-Z wrote a whole book called Decoded, where he pulls from his like tiny notebook that he used to carry around with him and write like secret lyrics that he didn't want anyone else to read and steal. He's an interesting one to think about notebooks. Matt de la Pena, who came to our school recently, he also talks about writing poems in notebooks. So that's kind of fun to just find out who use notebooks and share that with students. Yes, varieties of notebooks. We need all the notebooks. I love that. It's true. You can never have enough notebooks, I think. So that might be something to encourage thinking about too. And one of the big threads through this, through today, is to think about how not to standardize what students are doing with notebooks, because we want it to feel like it's their own personality, their own thing. This is just a spread from my research notebook. And if you just take a quick look at it, you can see there's no way I could accomplish this on a computer page, right? It's very drafty. It's very hybrid. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's recursive. I went back to it a lot. I added a sticky note to it. I have different colors going on. So this is the vision of notebooks that I'm hoping we bring to ourselves. So a few thoughts about why notebooks, and specifically physical notebooks, can be important and helpful for students. So one is that writing fluency can be improved through using notebooks. It's something that if we put in some timed writing and we just encourage students to write either for short periods of time or longer periods of time, we might start to blow up some of that perfectionism that can sometimes be one of the factors in writer's block. And I wonder if this is another question for you that you can share with each other of like, what gets in the way of your students feeling automatic in their writing, feeling like they can go quickly from what's in their head to what's on the page. Because there are lots of things that get in the way, but a lot of times it's that self-editor, it's that thing saying, those voices that kind of mute our own voices by saying, this isn't going to be good enough, you don't have the right words, you don't have the right framing, etc. So a physical notebook in its imperfection, in its draftiness, can really be helpful because it can start to interrupt that. We can build a trust in the process for students. And I think one of these things at my school anyway, we've been really engaged in trying to think about the influence of ChatGPT and like how is that like interfering sometimes with the assignments that we're giving and sending home. So the notebook can also be a place to encourage just authentic student writing where they don't feel the need for and also can't even access a bot, doing it for them. So trusting their own process, trusting that it can get better. The sixth grade team at my school did a pilot study last year of using translanguaging in notebooks across the curriculum. So that's another thing. If you have multilingual learners, and by the way, even if they don't literally speak other languages, everyone has multiple languages, even within one's own language. So the idea that translanguaging is part of our process, and Carla Espana has been someone who's done such amazing research on this, along with her colleagues. They were really an inspiration for us. But opening up the notebook to whatever language you're thinking comes to you in, you can write it as one of the first drafts, as a margin comment, as a way to practice or rehearse or get going for what you're thinking. That was really freeing and interesting. And it brought some interesting conversations among and between students as well. I also linked here in the focus and stamina, where it says focus and stamina, the Pomodoro technique. If you know of this technique, it's a way to, like, with just 25 minutes, have a very focused sprint of writing. 25 minutes may be a long time for your students in the beginning, but it could start with just 10 minutes and then grow. So encouraging some of that sprinting can be a way for them to, again, just practice that intensity and that fluency that can be so important. Another interesting thing about physical notebooks, there's been studies about this, that a physical notebook, actually, they did studies of, like, people taking notes in a physical notebook versus people taking notes digitally, either on their phone or on a tablet or on the computer. And it turned out that not only did they have better recall of the things they wrote in the notebook, but there was a more, like, a richer memory of the things that they were taking note of in the notebook. So there is something neurological that supports this. So it could be an encouragement for content area teachers as well to, allow for physical note taking in notebooks as a way to encourage this process of making sense of input, stuff that we're reading or that we're taking in. Too often, I think we're in the business of sort of micromanaging this note taking process. And when we get discouraged at how kids seem to be taking notes, we give them these sometimes like 1,000-point note catcher, which like turns into kind of Mad Libs. They're just like typing stuff in. So encouraging them, it might be frustrating at first, but to do this important prioritization work of what am I holding on to and why am I holding on to it? The physical notebook is a way to watch that happen in real time. And the last big point that I'll make is that it really can promote collaboration and more visible learning. So again, going back to the point about standardization, that the ideal is that students are not, if they're taking notes themselves with their own view, or if they're practicing writing whether it's a narrative or an essay, with their own thinking in mind, there's no way that one student is going to look exactly the same as the next. And so when they start to look at each other's, it's actually interesting for them to look at it, because they might say, oh, you tried something that I didn't try. Wow, look at how you organized this page, or the sketch that you drew. That's fascinating. So it can interest them and get them thinking about other things for them to try, but also, engage them in working with each other in ways that won't happen if they're all filling in the same assignment. That turns into a conversation about who got it right, and it turns to competitiveness versus this idea of collaboration. It's also really helpful for us to be able to visualize what students are doing. So these are just some things to think about and try. On the left, I've put some structures and habits, and those structures and habits can be cross discipline. So if you're a homeroom teacher in a junior school and you have fourth graders, they could be using these same structures no matter if they're in social studies or if they're in English, even if they're in science, right? And then if you're in a middle school or high school environment, these could be happening across classrooms, and it's great collaboration between teachers. So teaching them these structures, these are very helpful structures for organization. But what's most helpful about them is when the author or writer is deciding which one makes sense for the information they're trying to capture. So instead of giving them a Venn diagram to fill in, having the students decide, oh, I actually am trying to compare something here, I'm going to use a Venn diagram. And then these are habits that are really worthwhile: tracking systems, long writes, write-arounds where students actually like write to each other and then keep writing to each other. In book club conversations, those can be really helpful, right? They can definitely, instead of having a conversation the whole time, once in a while they might stop and have a written conversation. And for our students who, on demand discussion is stressful, whether because they're an introvert or whether coming to English in an oral way might take them a little longer. Sometimes that writing can be a real on ramp to them being able to discuss. The other thing is open note essay. So we've been experimenting with this in both humanities and English in our school, that when it comes time for them to have a timed essay writing in class, they can have access to their notes. And that gives validation to having taken the notes, but it also is sort of a relaxing on-ramp to the work that they're doing in class. These are just some suggestions for continuous improvement. So celebrating and seeing what they've all done with gallery walks, having check-ins with partners regularly, conferences with the teacher, checklists. I'm going to show you a couple just really fast. And then personal goals. So thinking about what do they want to get more standardized with, if it's spelling, if it's punctuation, if it's writing longer, they could have personal goals. And then, especially in the content area, keeping personal word lists of vocabulary that's key to whatever it is they're researching, that can be also really helpful. These are just some examples of ways that we've set up some checklists for the organization of the notebook. Again, putting it back into the student's hands, naming for them that having each page have some kind of organization, and then having a plan for organization across pages can be really important. And you'll notice that this is the 7th and 8th grade checklist. In the mastering column, we now are encouraging them to return to individual pages to add new thinking. I've seen kids make little fold-up Post-its that they stick on later to show that they have new thoughts based on questions they had before. They get very creative. And if we name that for them, they will start to approximate it and try it. So as a last thought, I think like anything that we try, these notebooks can increase student agency and lead to more voice. They can create a student as an author or an audience for themselves, create a space for rehearsal, and view the student as self-assessing and setting their own goals. But notebooks could also just increase compliance, right? If they're just copying and pasting stuff into their notebook, seeing the notebook as an assignment landing pad or the teacher as the audience and judge. So I think trying to move from that compliance model to the agency model can be really helpful. So as a last question, just thinking, what will you try? What of these things feel important, helpful, and possible? I'm hoping some of them feel interesting to you guys today.
Yeah, as they come in through the YouTube chat, I know for myself, you convinced me. I was on the fence about some things with organizing my own classroom last year. I'm serious. I was like, should we move to a binder? Would it be more, with loose leaf paper? Would it be more better organizational strategy for my 7th graders? And then just seeing these things reminded me of my philosophy of writing and, like you said, student agency. And I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, now I'm like, I don't even know why I was on the fence. And I know oh, go ahead.
Thank you for bringing that up, Jessica, because the idea of a binder, it's just very different because you can open it and pull stuff out. So the idea that the notebook is has integrity and that what you did earlier is important too, I think that's the metaphor that I enjoy about bindings, even if it's a spiral binding, but it's not like I'm going to rip half of it out sometimes.
100%. So that reminder was much needed for me, I know, and I know our viewers are adding their thoughts here as well, and we'll continue the conversation on YouTube and on all of our other channels. So thank you again, Audra, for your time today. We really appreciate your contribution to all the amazing work that's happening today. A couple of reminders as we continue with our morning. Is it morning, afternoon? I'm not sure yet. Just that the gathering has always been a free day of amazing learning, as we just saw a game changer for me and as well as many others watching right now. So thank you again. If you feel inspired by this session, please, we ask that you do visit our charity page and pay the joy forward. Coming up next, we have more wonderful sessions from more amazing presenters. We have Dr. Cindy Gerwin and Markeisha Tisby with Reclaiming Educator Voice and Passion as our workshop session. And alongside that, we also have book talks that highlight AAPI creators and characters with Janet Zarkin. So thank you again, Dr. Robb, for your time and inspiration today. And we will see you all soon.